You won't be able to do this if you do not master phase number 1, phase number 2, and phase number 3. In this video, I want to speak a little bit more about something we left off last time when we spoke about the stacking exercise, because I felt there was still a lot of unclarity in terms of understanding what it actually does in order to draw the figure from all different angles. In this video, I want to talk about how to enter the next phase of your perspective drawings. So last time we spoke about the stacking exercise, how it helps you as a warm-up exercise in order to get into the next phase. By the end of this video, I hope that you can identify what phase you are in right now and what you need to do in order to enter the next phase. The thing I want to talk about today, which I personally call the 4 phases of perspective. This is more of a personal interpretation of myself in order to understand what phases I went through in order to learn to draw the figure in any angle in perspective. So when I started to draw more only with ink and trying to analyze how to draw the figure in every angle also from imagination, I faced a problem of understanding how to go into applying things such as indication on a character or indication such as form on something that is from my own imagination, but also keeping the base of perspective in mind and understanding the viewpoint and the view angle of things. So the more I practiced this, the more I understood that I have to go into something that I call the application or indication phase. So first, let's start with the first phase, which I call phase number 1, which is the clarification phase. So what do I mean by this? The clarification phase is basically there to focus on seeing the planes of the box. And let me just quickly repeat this for everyone who've never seen this. We see a box on a table. We only see the front part of that box. We see one plane. Now we rotate this box sideways. We see 2 planes, and where we eventually always want to go to whenever we draw something, we want to see all 3 planes in order to get the 3D effect. It's kind of like the best understanding of what we actually try to do as artists, because we are manipulators. We actually try to fool somebody that whatever we show them on paper is 3-dimensional. In this clarification phase, we are basically focusing on seeing the planes. So these planes here, 1, 2, 3. We are trying to understand the tilt and the viewpoint. So we try to figure out where we are right now when we look at the object. We are above the object, so this is the eye again, right? And we're looking at the box and we see the top plane of the box. So we see also the side plane, and maybe we see a little bit of the other plane here, but mostly we see the object from above. So that basically indicates us that we as an observer are above the box. And we need to learn and understand where we are in comparison to the object we are looking at. So for this, we also need to identify the X, Y, and Z axes. Whenever you have used a 3D program, you know what it is, right? So we basically have the X, Y, and Z axes, and they help us to orient where we are going and what are we looking at. So basically, the first phase of clarification, and to show it very, very simple, is to look at this. Right? This is the first phase. We are looking at the box. If you understand these things, you master the first phase. That is good. So what is the next step, and how do we get to the next phase in order to get closer to a result like this? So here we go into what we spoke in the previous video, and I definitely recommend watching also the other video because I speak more in depth about this. But in phase 2, we basically, and I called it the stacking exercise or method. What we eventually want to do, and let's quickly show again phase number 1. Right? So we have phase number 1. Now we want to go into the next one, and this is where some people feel like they don't really understand what it means to be in phase number 2 or the stacking exercise, which is basically dividing this into multiple boxes. So this is basically the second step, is we are going to subdivide the box into smaller sections. Can do that multiple times, so we can technically subdivide this again and say, okay, we can also do like multiple ones, but again, remember what we spoke about last video, right? Everything is not straight at the end of the viewpoint. We also have curvature. So this is basically the elaborated version of a simple subdivision versus something that is more separated in more geoforms. And this is where we use the stacking method, right? Because we are stacking 3D objects on top of each other. What we do, we begin to understand planes, but, and it's really, really important, we also pay close attention to convergence. So basically the convergence that we have either way in this direction or in the opposite. And last but not least, which is also a very important part in phase 2, is to understand ellipses. And that's why the stacking phase has multiple rounds where we do the same thing, but we also do it with cylinders, where we stack cylinders on top of each other. Because as you can think of, right, the human body has a lot of ellipses everywhere. So we need to be able to communicate those ellipses of the body. Very, very important. If you can identify yourself in this phase, that is great. Okay, so these are the things that you need to be able to do in order to master this phase. The interesting part comes, what is the next phase? So now that we went through phase 1 and phase 2, and we maybe identified that we are basically at the end of phase 2, we need to go to phase number 3. And I call that the Lego phase. Call it the Lego phase because for me it always felt like playing with Legos. If you don't know what it is, it's basically these little stones you can stick into each other and kind of like build whatever you want. In the Lego phase, we basically want to be able to utilize all the basic geoforms in order to construct complex forms. And in this case, the human figure. This will give us the power to place these forms wherever we need to have them. Now let's reverse engineer, okay? Phase number 1, and we just repeat it because it's good for your brain. Phase number 1 was this, right? Or the second phase is the stacking method, so the thing we spoke about just a moment ago. And phase number 3 is basically the Lego phase, where we start to utilize every geometric form that we can use in order to build a figure, for example. So how does that look? So basically what we now try to do, we try to stay and think about the human form, and we can take, for example, this as an example. Let's take a look at this figure. If we would place these 3 boxes on top of her, then this part would make the top part of that figure, then the medium part would be the middle box, and the lower part would be the lower legs, right? We can still keep that in mind. Now let's reverse engineer that drawing. We subdivided these three boxes again in order to get a more complex geometry. And this transition from phase 1 to phase 3 is really hard because you have to manage everything at the same time. Okay? So that's why it is so important to be able to understand plane change, viewpoint, and ellipsis. And if we would now take this poorly drawn geometric figure and would draw our phase 1 box around it, you would see that we still operate in the same space. And the interesting part of this is we come from two sides. On one side, we try to approach something as complex as the human figure to simplify it with geometric forms, but we also come from the side where we think in a little dimension which is communicated as a box which has, so to speak, three different axes. So in order to master this, we need to be able to utilize all the geometric forms we have and then stacking them together as it would be Lego. So for example, what you can do in order to practice this is you can basically take a reference of any image, any figure you want to draw, and you start basically by looking at these and try to build them in your Lego phase. So in order to master this phase, this is what you need to do. And whenever you struggle to survive in this phase, take a step back. And think about where you came from. Because you came from here. Okay? Now you maybe ask, oh wow, that's really hard. Phase number 3 is really hard. What is the last phase? Well, the last phase, phase number 4, the application, or so to speak, indication phase. Because eventually we are artists and we don't want to stick to the geometric figure all the time. We want to be able to communicate certain impressions. The goal of phase number 4 is basically applying impressions and details. Sorry for my bad spelling, not my native language. And we also want to keep, and this is very important, we always want to keep the underlying form and structure in mind while we add our own creativity. Okay, so basically we want to apply indications of the form and the ellipse going around the upper arm. This is an indication of the collarbone, but it's also an indication of the geometric form below. Same for these lines, or even these lines. All of them are impressions, but also indications, little strokes, little volume lines. And this is the end, and this is phase number 4. So in order to reach phase number 4, we need to be able to go through phase number 1, 2, 3. And you won't be able to do this if you do not master phase number 1, phase number 2, and phase number 3. I also want to clarify one important thing here. This is nothing you master overnight. It takes time. So you need to be able to give yourself the time to be able to learn this. You won't be able to do this in a matter of 2 weeks by rushing through phase number 1, 2, and 3. What you want to do, you want to repeat the mechanics, the routines, but also the understanding of form and perspective. So identify what phase you are and then tackle the phase in the way I just described it. Feel free to like and subscribe. I appreciate you all and see you in the next video.